Let's reconvene the meeting. It is 11:31, so we can take up our item 6.9, 11:30 a.m. Consideration of resolution to extend temporary reduction of the cannabis cultivation tax rate, extend temporarily limiting cultivation tax to Canopy area through 2025, and rescind the suspension of tax rate increases pursuant to the Consumer Price Index. So there's kind of three things happening here simultaneously. We have two separate resolutions that offered tax relief in 2022. One of them was to suspend the tax rate increase pursuant to Consumer Price Index. The other one was both the changing it from cultivation area to canopy area, and also a reduction of 50% based on what the current tax rate was at that point in time. There was a third resolution that helped extend all of those through the end of this calendar year for the harvest season that occurs in 2024. So all of those, and also written in the resolution that is in front of the board, will be rescinded on 12/31, just because they were going to expire anyways, and thought it'd be easier to clean it up by creating a brand new resolution, and thankful to the support I received from County Council office in order to make sure I brought what was hopefully the clearest way to move forward with this. This one continues to extend the tax rate decrease of 50% based on the original April 18th, 2022 tax rate. Then also continues to follow what is, in my opinion, a very logical thing to go and align with the state to use canopy area versus the cultivation area. But in this one, I'm offering to allow the tax rate increase pursuant to Consumer Price Index to start again starting January 1st, 2025. During that time period, obviously, we had a lot of issues dealing with post-COVID. The CPI increase was kind of out of this world, inflation, all of that. Things have gone back to something that's a little bit more normalized. The voters did vote on Measure C. That does allow us to reduce it. It doesn't allow us to increase it. But in my thought process, it was how do we get more towards what the voters asked for, and still providing the relief that the industry needs. And just real quick, obviously it's in the memo as well. The industry, at least during the legal cultivation time period, the latest version of it at least, saw a high of $1,200 a pound, and is still seeing a decrease as of today around the $375, with anticipation that that might even decrease as harvest season gets started and the supply increases. So I still think that a relief is necessary to ensure that our industry continues. We are collecting tax dollars on this, as you can see from what I put in the memo, which I received, and again, thankful for the support from the tax collector's office, that we're at the 2.5 million range at this moment in time. So just wanted to open it up for discussion and see how the board feels about continuing some of this and rescinding one of those tax relief options. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this forward. The deadline is coming up for those resos to expire. The reso before us, accordingly, is kind of a three-headed beast. So I just want to address some. One thing, a little housekeeping in the whereases. I don't know if it's super relevant to today's item, but another resolution was passed May 14th, Resolution 2024-51. And I think that refers to the opt-out date for cultivation. So there's a lot of sites to tax installments and stuff like that. So just housekeeping, if you want to add that in for clarity, that would be something to consider. I'm kind of curious, certainly the canopy thing supports strongly, but this would just be a one-year reso, and then we're going to have to go back. So one question for the sponsor is, when do we get to make the canopy adjustment permanent, and what vehicle could we do that by? It would be a separate resolution. Would that take a separate ordinance? And if so, would that ordinance be allowed to support Measure C without being seen as amending it? So that's it. I love the canopy being extended, but what I would really love to see is the canopy being adopted on a permanent basis, and this resolution doesn't do that. Probably the biggest point of disagreement for me is the proposed continuation of the tax reduction. There are any number of market forces and economic forces that can and will continue to put pressure on our state licensed cannabis cultivators, but we knew that going in. And the voters who approved Measure C, and I have the ballot language right here in front of me because we worked on that in 2016, asked, shall a general purpose tax be imposed on legally authorized cannabis cultivation with an exemption for personal medicinal use occurring in unincorporated areas of the County of Lake at $1 per square foot of outdoor, $2 per square foot of mixed light, and $3 for indoor, subject to annual consumer price index increases and generating annual revenue of approximately $8 million per average year. And I want to highlight for this board and for those in attendance that we've only hit that target once. The one impact of the ongoing 50% tax reduction is we have been blipping along since the initial reso at somewhere between $1 and $2 million a year. I'm not sure that's what the voters were expecting. And to be clear, Measure C was passed by pretty substantial margins. 14,812 voters voted yes on Measure C. That's 62.7% of the vote of ballots cast. Suffice to say that with fewer than 200 permits in the county, most of those 14,812 votes were not cultivators. So we definitely do need to support our industry, but we also need to support our county. And that was one big reason why Measure C was proposed. The Board of Supervisors at the time definitely said, we're going to advance these regulations, but we're going to wait to see what happens with Measure C first. It was very much a pay-to-play framework going in, and it continues to be that way. And to say that this year's ongoing economic drama is sufficient to grant a 50% tax rate, knowing that there's going to be drama from here on out. Cannabis prices are going to continue to drop until they hit commodity level. So if we are to take notice of market conditions as our guiding metric for our tax rate, then I think that coupling needs to be uncoupled. The sooner the better. We are losing money at the county level. There is an opportunity cost when we don't go back to the initial vision that was expressed in Measure C. And if we go back to the original vision of Measure C and it turns into a mass industry extinction event, I'll eat my words. But there are so many other market forces at work, including positive market forces like the state having rescinded its cultivation tax. So I understand we're going to hear from industry, and it is tough times to get these permits, but I think some of our established industry players can afford this tax, can afford to pay it at the full rate, and those rates continue to be among the lowest in the state. So the 50% reduction is a hard no for me. If you want to discuss a slighter reduction, but let's pin it to some logic, because if we're only going to do these reductions based on declining pound prices on cultivation, we will never end these discounts. So at what point do we reduce the discount or end it entirely is my question for the sponsor and for industry.
And I can respond to that. I think here what I'm offering is one cancellation of tax relief. I would love to see next year looking at maybe dropping it to 40% and continuously dropping until, if we get rid of the 50% and industry is really impacted, rebuilding it will be much more difficult than if we slowly adjust as the years go by. Once we start seeing possibly a decline, then maybe that's where we need to stop and reevaluate. But at this moment in time, I don't want to lose out on the 2.5 million. And I don't feel threatened that it's going to disappear if we do so. But at the same time, it being a flat rate versus a percentage has always been my personal issue. That's a different story. But with a flat rate, we have to figure out how to be a sliding scale. And unfortunately, that requires these types of conversations that we're having today. Supervisor Paista.
I would have preferred that there was a comprehensive analysis done by staff to figure out exactly where we need to be. So I do agree with Supervisor Green on this. I feel like this is kind of just throwing up what we did last year without that impact analysis. I get that it's for one more year, but it just seems very piecemeal and not very strategic and not in line with what the voters have approved. I do understand that there does need to be some relief, but things have changed, and just going with what we did the last 2 years and not analyzing a lot of the changes that have occurred and some of the things that he's brought up, I think is not appropriate for the responsibility that we have.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from board members before we open it up for public?
No, I'd like to hear from the public first.
All right, let's go ahead and open it up. Anyone wish to speak on this item, please come on up. And actually, let's start with Mr. Sullivan.
You actually may be able to provide some additional background just on the few changes that are coming up, if your board would like.
Please, please. And I apologize, I'll open up public comment after these.
So there's some information that may be relevant to share just based off the board discussion so far. Our office is planning to bring forward a revision to the ordinance. We do have a few amendments that need to be done. Certainly when we bring that forward, I think the point came up about the Canopy area. That's something that we could include in the ordinance just to make that change permanent. I think our office would fully support that, especially given that's the way the state views it. Wherever we can be in alignment, which is not always often, but anywhere that we can, I think makes our life a lot easier and is certainly easier on the cultivators to follow.
So can I just add one other thing? With that update, are you looking at the penalties too? Because that is a really big problem that we have. We're giving maximum penalties for folks that are 1 day late, and then there's no incentive to make the payment when they can make the payment.
Yes, the penalty structure on this ordinance is unusual compared to other tax ordinances. And in most ordinances, there's an initial, and most state taxes as well, there's an initial penalty, and then it increases on a monthly basis afterwards. In the Cannabis Cultivation ordinance, tax ordinance, it's a 25% penalty right up front. And if you're 1 day late, or whether you're 6 months late, it's a 25% penalty. That doesn't really create great incentives. It doesn't give us very much to work with. And I think it penalizes people in sort of an unusual way. So that is within, at least to my understanding, that's within the scope of the tax that's already in effect because we're lowering the penalty. We're not trying to increase it. We're just grading it out and creating opportunity for people to pay with a lesser penalty the sooner they pay. Some of the other changes, I don't know if they're relevant to this discussion so much, but I should share them. The other amendments we're going to be going for have more to do with enforcement. Because Measure C was silent on a lot of the typical language that's included in county tax ordinances. It's missing the breakdown of authority for the ability to place liens and levies and a lot of the authority we have, for instance, on transient occupancy tax, which would be the most analogous. So most counties that have a tax ordinance have similar language. So that's certainly within the scope of the existing measure as well. We plan to bring that back and tighten it up, and that should help our office with enforcing the tax measure as it stands. Liz Martinez may have some information to add about the current delinquencies and what their status is.
Yeah, so our delinquencies are actually not as much as we anticipated or we thought. So we worked with community development, and we actually only have 8 permits that have not been paid. And that's approximately $167,000 in tax and about $41,000 in penalty. And we have sent out notices. Unfortunately, we have not received any response. And we do know that they did cultivate. So we're working on following up again and see kind of what we need to do. It's just difficult enforcing since there's not a whole lot in the ordinance.
And one other piece that may be relevant to share, when you look at the historical data about the taxes paid in prior years, it's really hard to analyze year by year what each of those figures means. Because every year, I mean, as you saw in the resolution Supervisor Sabatier brought forward, we have made changes to this program. So comparing one year to the other is tough without going into the context of, well, even what were the due dates, right? We've changed the due dates several times, the reductions. So I would just highlight that if you want to get into looking at one year versus another, you really have to do a deeper dive into what was the structure of the tax program in that year. The other thing I point out is because of the ability to opt out or reduce the cultivation area size, that's one of the primary drivers for the lower revenue. But the amount of people opting out is quite high. And especially as we get the data in from CDD, who's been definitely helpful in trying to get that to us as fast as they can. You're seeing more and more people over these last few years that did not cultivate. So I think there's something in the range of 25 million square feet authorized at the county level, with another 15 million pending under review by CDD. So that means theoretically in the next year, you could be looking at between 25 and 40 million square feet that is being cultivated between outdoor and mixed light. I don't have the breakdown for that. But because so many people are opting out, I mean, our opt-out rate, if you look at it, is probably up over 80%. It's the vast majority of that is not being utilized. So that's one of the biggest drivers of our tax revenue that you're receiving. Because if you look at this year, even that 2.5, it's a 50% reduction. Even if there weren't this reduction in place, we would have only got 5 million, meaning that the vast majority of our permits are not being utilized. So I just want to highlight that is probably the primary driver of that lower revenue, is that ability for growers not to cultivate and not make use of their permit. So I just thought that might be valuable to share.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions before I open up public comment?
I did want to
ACAO?
add one thing where the treasurer tax collector was bringing up the single year look. I want to very much express that that's a true statement, because at the beginning of this fiscal year, we have a negative $148,000 in that same account that we aren't accruing back. So that 2.5 number is not 2.5 for that fiscal year. It's actually just over 2.3. So everything is rolling and not very specific timeframes.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and open up public comment.
I'm going to kick it off here. Good morning, members of the board. Chair Sabatier, Nara Dalbaca, president of the Lake County Cannabis Alliance, so switching hats. Thank you for bringing this item. Thank you for bringing it. We are, as an industry, happy to be here. We want to be here, want to stay here. You're going to hear more from the individual businesses about their specific issues and their challenges, but I'm going to give a bit of a 30,000-foot view here. I absolutely agree with Supervisor Pyska and Supervisor Green that we need a longer-term solution. Businesses need to be able to plan. Being able to not come back every year and continue to ask for this would be fantastic. We would love to see a gross receipts tax. That's what Humboldt chose to do. They had a major reduction. They actually did an 85% reduction for several years. And when they, instead of going right back to that square footage tax, they went to a gross receipts, which is much easier for particularly outdoor growers to take, because then the county is invested in the success of the industry. The need is still there, and one of the major problems is the state, and I think you need to look at the state. The local jurisdictions are doing what you can. You guys are taking a haircut, and it is appreciated and it's necessary, as you're seeing people are decreasing the amount that they're farming. We're facing a potential increase to a 19% excise tax next year at the state level. And that's part of the reason why we need to continue to have this relief at the local level while we fight this at the state level. The Blue Ribbon Task Force at the state that looked at the initial legalization of cannabis said, hey, when we did it with alcohol and we lifted that prohibition, the thing that we did really successfully was make legal alcohol the same price as the bootlegger alcohol, and that's how they were able to put those cartels out of business. And that just went out the window when they started to create regulations and tax policy around cannabis. It became a way to fund governments. And now what we have is, I believe your last cannabis program director told me that 90% of the cannabis in this county is being cultivated illegally. And I think that the county really needs to consider cost recovery from those unlicensed operators. Those are the folks that are trafficking humans, that are abusing animals, that are abusing our environment, that are poisoning wildlife and stealing water. AB 195, which was passed at the state as a cannabis budget trailer in 2022, allows for several mechanisms for cost recovery for investigations of unlicensed cannabis. There's ways to recover the cost of the investigation, and there's also ways to go after the landlords that are profiting from that, $10,000 per day per violation.
You could please
and I would
finish
like to
your
see the
comment.
county look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Michael Donegan. I just have a very small thing to kind of bring up. Noticing that lately, all the talk, we're concentrating on percentages, we're concentrating on, like Mr. Green said here, we're losing money. You cannot lose money that are not, you don't have. They're not your money, they're our money. So county is not losing money. The whole thing is how to get this business going and the county makes more money, not by just increasing this, increasing that, but creating an environment that will make people prosperous and make people outside of the county to fight to come here. Right now, nobody wants to come here. They said, okay, you don't have any laws, you don't have any rules, it changes every day. How can I make my budget for 1 year? I cannot work on a 1 year budget. I have to have 5 year, 10 year to know what I'm doing here. I got my license back in 2018. I haven't had a penny for myself so far. Yes, I'm investing in the infrastructure, capital investments, but why? Because you have to be competitive, otherwise out of business. And there's no money. There's no money for us to spend more. It is $1 this, $1 that. Who else pays that kind of taxes? It looks like almost like a mafia talk now. You have to get your money. We don't have money. Pound cost to produce right now on the labor and everything else that increases by 40%, power, everything else, is we cannot sell even on cost the way it goes. I don't know. You can make money only if we're still alive. If we're not, there's no money. So I would really appreciate if you guys kind of concentrate on what exactly has to be done to make this business prosperous, people to want to work, want to be here, and to create some wealth for this county so we can have our infrastructure upgraded and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Max Hopkins. I'm a cannabis consultant. I've had the good fortune of working up here for approximately the last 5 years. I just wanted to, endorse all three propositions. I think they're excellent. And then just philosophically wanted to share that I had the good fortune to be here during the glory days when everybody started setting up farms. And it was an exciting time. It was a lucrative time. It was a really worthwhile time. Due to circumstances beyond anybody's control, we've seen a precipitous decline in both the number of farms and the amount of area under cultivation. And as was pointed out, 80% of the area currently is not under cultivation. Probably 2/3 of the farms are now out of business completely. My family originally came from Europe post-World War II. And Mom still tells stories about not getting enough to eat while she was growing up. After the war, the Americans, God bless their hearts, came in with a Marshall Plan and saved Europe. especially Western Europe, and the result was an economic miracle. Here we have a seed for a potential plant that could grow beyond our wildest expectations. But that plant, much like post-World War II Europe, is suffering tremendously. And here, as responsible government leaders, you have this tremendous opportunity to nurture, cultivate, and bring light to this plant and let it thrive and develop into something that could be wonderful. So I wholeheartedly encourage you, all of you, to please vote for all three of these resolutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Good afternoon, Chair Sabatier and Board. My name is Autumn Carsey. I'm a local resident of Kelseyville and the CEO and founder of 2 licensed farms, Wildcat Farm in District 5, Artemis Farm in District 3, and a manufacturing and distribution facility, Artemis Co-Pack, in District 1. Thank you, Chair Sabatier, for bringing this resolution forward. It is an important issue that affects all farms, large and small. When the tax structure was initially implemented for outdoor product, it was around $900 per pound minimum. In 2021, due to oversaturation in market prices, hit around $200 per pound, less than the cost of production. Last year's prices were up to $450 a pound for outdoor, and as a result, many farmers chose to expand by about 20%, including the largest farms in the state, which subsequently will create a flood of product into the market. Currently, we are seeing light depths at around $350 a pound. If this is a precursor as what's to come for outdoor prices, we are likely looking at what is again below the cost of production for many small farms that do not have flat land, automated equipment, and other economy of scale advantages held by larger operators. I built our processing and manufacturing and distribution facility with small farmers in mind. Our goal is to offer small farms every advantage that is available to MSO corporate operators post-cultivation. This includes automated bagging and jarring lines for flour, automated vape cartridge filling, and one of the largest solventless hash processing facilities in the state. What we are seeing in the market is that most local farms cannot afford to pay for post-processing service until they have realized revenue at the retail or wholesale levels. Often these accounts go unpaid without regulation. This unfortunately puts Artemis Co-Pack into a unique position to either become a bank or not take on contracts from small farmers that cannot afford to pay. The distribution and manufacturing giant Herbal went out of business largely for this reason. We are still here. We are deeply invested in the success of the cannabis program within this county. The cannabis industry, like all agricultural commodities, ebb and flow due to supply and demand. Similar to the end of alcohol prohibition, cannabis is still in a nascent state and it needs time to adjust and level the playing field, especially against illegal operators that continue to go untaxed and unencumbered by regulations. I would like to ask that the board look at this issue holistically. The state has placed an undue and impossible burden on legal cannabis operators. There is currently $732 million in unpaid taxes due to the state of California. An estimated 72% of businesses that owe this tax debt are no longer in business. Financial challenges persist with an estimated $1.2 billion in uncollected taxes owed by distributors. Long story short, there is only so much meat on the bone. I encourage the county to adopt these resolutions and extend to sustainable tax rates. I would also like to ask that the county work with other jurisdictions to urge the state to lower the tax burden on cannabis businesses so there is room for increases in county taxes.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Hello, my name is Sarah Bodner, consultant. Thank you, Chair Sabatier, for bringing this resolution forward, especially at this time of the year and not, in the final months of the year. And I would say it is also a bit too late because it's really difficult to be having a conversation about an agricultural crop, which it depends on the cycles of the seasons, without certainty, without a line of sight into what the tax rate might look like for operators. So with that said, here we are, and I'm glad we have some time to hash this out because what we decide is not just going to impact operators this year and the year to come, but for future years. And we're in a highly unstable industry. Lake County has been a leader. The reason we're having this conversation is because you were early to adopt cultivation regulations. You were early to adopt taxation. You said yes to bringing cannabis in. You said yes to economic development. And the voters said yes, that they wanted this industry to also benefit the community, the government, and the people. And I think that, everything that's been said is true and right, that we need to figure out how it can continue to feed into the community and feed into the commons and feed into the government. And how are we going to make sure that we still have that supply? I think this proposal gets us closer. It extends rates for another year, which would provide some certainty to operators. But I think this question about what is our long-term plan is incredibly prudent, so that we don't have to use resources to come back and have this conversation every year. And how can we answer the question of meeting that need, which is the intent of the voters, that this industry would benefit this community? If we squeeze it too much, then there's nothing. And so perhaps there's more analysis needed, perhaps there's more roundtables needed to talk about the real state of the cannabis industry. Maybe it's time for LCCA to come back and give another presentation. Because when we voted on this years ago, we had no idea what the state of California was going to do. We had no idea what this industry was going to do. And we are not seeing an overarching success across this state that we hoped for and anticipated about regarding this industry's ability to perform in the way. And that is because we're being strangled. We're being strangled by the state of California's regulations, and we're being strangled by taxes. So how can we break that cycle to create a sustainable path forward? And if we're not ready to vote on this today, I would say let's figure out what we need to do to be able to get a vote. And could we look at something that's a little bit longer than this year? Could we look at a 2-year plan while we look at maybe a more permanent plan? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good afternoon, Chair Sabatier and Supervisors. Andrew Dobbs-Kramer here to speak on behalf of Wildcat Farms, a Lake County-owned and operated cannabis cultivator, one of the few remaining. We're here today because the extension of the cultivation tax relief first passed in 2022 is a life or death question for the local cultivation industry. In addition to multiple layers of taxation all through the supply chain, the cannabis industry faces regulatory hurdles and fees not levied on other industries. Farming is a notoriously difficult and unpredictable industry, and with the addition of these fees and taxes, it is incredibly challenging for cannabis cultivators to break even. For small farmers without automated equipment, the average direct cost of production is roughly 2/3 of the current market price for wholesale products. As you've heard, we expect this downward pricing trend to continue through the 2025 cultivation season. As it stands, the cannabis industry in Lake County and indeed all of California is in dire straits. According to a recent Benzinga article, and I quote, "The retreat from cultivation is evident in Lake County, a formerly thriving growing region in Northern California. Here, numerous farmers have relinquished their cultivation permits. Data from CRB Monitor shows a stark over 20% drop in active business licenses in the first quarter of 2024 compared to the previous year." As we've heard today, that's just the relinquished permits. Even more permits are still active but not being used, and people have opted out. So the decision in 2022 by this board to grant cultivation tax relief was really a vital lifeline for the industry and is part of the reason that there is any industry remaining here. If it were not for that cultivation tax relief, even fewer cultivators would be here. So extending this tax relief today is the right thing to do, not just for the local cannabis operators, but indeed for all of Lake County, for the employees, for the ancillary service providers, and everyone else who benefits from the economic activity created by cannabis cultivation in this county. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, let's go to Zoom. CBT.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Christopher Thomas. I'm with GoStant, and I'm a resident of Lower Lake. And first, I'd like to say thank you to the Board of Supervisors and the county for having this discussion. I'd like to say thank you to the previous speakers. You all did a wonderful job. I'm going to try to keep this quick. So obviously, the industry is still on extreme tenuous ground, and a price crash would wipe a lot of the small farmers out. And the way things sound right now, it seems like we might be heading towards lower prices. And the price crash unfortunately, in my opinion, is somewhat tied directly to the taxes and the fees. Because with all the taxes and the fees, we pass that along and it goes to the distro and then to the retail, and the retail passes it on, and then the customer says, well, I don't want to pay that much. I'm gonna go somewhere else. And that hurts everybody. So to that, I mean, I would like to see this canopy tax be frozen forever, or as low as it can be, or figure out something else. Because, we just can't keep on this way. So, and not having to pay the canopy tax at our farm has really helped us to remain in cultivation, because without that, we'd just be spending all of our money on labor and fees and everything else. And like the gentleman said earlier, we don't have any money to really spend on anything else. So we're so invested in this farm. We have every penny from every year in this farm, and we have no way out except to keep going forward. And putting more taxes on just takes more, out of our pot to try to move forward. And also, I think a gentleman said this earlier, but to expand, keep in mind that we're the most highly regulated crop in the state. There's no other agricultural product that is regulated, taxed, and forced to pay as many fees or jump through as many hoops as we are. The county and the state do benefit greatly from cannabis taxes and fees. So I think that, maybe we should try to work together, work together more so that we can try to grow this industry instead of it becoming stale. And I do feel that to tax us and force fees on us and to give us minimal representation throughout the state, it's not all on the county, a lot of it is the state, to help us thrive in this industry is skating along the lines of crop discrimination. And if this type of discrimination continues, we're going to be forced as cultivators to come together and take some type of action to, get forward in this industry. And because we're tired of losing our money and our farms to corporate greed, like these big corporate farms that just eat everything up. So, we're just trying to maintain.
Please finish your comment. Your
in
3
a
minutes
state,
are up.
California. Okay, yeah. Okay. In a state where agriculture is one of the most predominant industries, why is cannabis singled out with the most taxes and fees and regulations and barely any representation compared to all the other ones? We just want it to be
That doesn't
fair.
sound like
That's
a
all.
final comment. That sounds like a new start. So your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Carolyn Hillman. I see that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Now you're muted. Unmuted, but still can't hear you. If you could try to resolve your tech issues, we're going to move on to the next person and we'll come back to you. Next, phone 1447.
Hello, my name is Chris Jennings. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I just want to say thank you, and just want to say thank you for bringing this resolution forward. I think it's super important that we do continue this tax break for all the cultivators. I think everyone has said it very, very clearly, all the problems and reasons and benefits to it. I just think at the end of the day, if we squeeze out our small farmers and we don't, if we don't take into consideration of the small farmers, the small business, which is the backbone to our economy, the ripple effect that it has from spending the money locally in the stores, what restaurants we have left, everything else, it's going to be very detrimental for the county. The county's not at a loss. You weren't collecting taxes in the medical days to begin with. What you were collecting was the ripple effect from every medical grow happening, where people would go to Mendo Mill, buy their PVC, buy their parts, buy their lumber, build their homes. I think it's important that we definitely get a long-term resolution and we continue down this path. Obviously, the goose that lays the golden egg stopped laying the golden egg about a year after legalization, and we made tax laws or tax initiatives based off of that. And it's definitely time to come back to the drawing board, look at everything as a whole, and try to figure out a means or a path forward where we don't lose our entire industry and people lose their entire livelihoods and everything they've worked hard for to get to where they're at today. So I definitely am full support of this. Thank you, Chair Sabatier, for bringing this forward. And I hope you all approve this and we can move forward to find a long-term resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next is Kristen Callahan.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, hi. Hi, and I just want to extend the thank you to bringing this resolution forward, and thanks to the Board of Supervisors for providing this opportunity for us to comment as cultivators. You know, I've been coming to these meetings since the very beginning, and one of the reasons I love this county so much are the people here, and the people here, I think the main thing that I'm focused on right now is the ability to have more jobs and more economic, trajectory for our small little town in these different areas of Lake County. We're greatly affected by taxes, and I can agree with everything everyone said. There's no easy solution, but Mr. Sabatier many times, many meetings has talked about gross sales tax receipt being like and not just him, lots of other people involved that have been a part of the agribusiness. It's very competitive. It's very, very difficult. And all of us are trying our best to stay in it. There isn't anything I want more than for our family farm to continue. But unfortunately, the supply chains, the cost of goods have gone up and the operating costs have gone up. And the amount of stores have gone, are changing. The region doesn't have enough outlets to support the amount of production that's being done. And the amount of time it takes to, produce a product and then actually get the money for it. It takes almost a year for us to get the money. So sometimes longer, sometimes never getting paid. So without a vertical business, these increases in taxes can really, really affect a lot of the best people here. And one of the main points I want to make is like keeping the best people here in cannabis, because the history repeats itself, and having good people in an industry that has been overrun by difficult hurdles is a really great way to sustain economic success, because who you're working with is important, and who is going to leave is really detrimental to our future here in Lake County. And I urge the supervisors to please extend this relief for all cultivators, big and small, doesn't matter. We all really need it. And thank you so much for hearing me. Have a great day.
Thank you for your comment. Next is Sky.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, this is Justin Quayle, not Sky, sorry. Pillsbury Family Farms. A lot of the grant money was used to pay the back taxes, and for people, farmers like me, that needed that grant money to expand their farms so we could afford the upcoming future of paying higher taxes. I really think that it's a good idea to abolish it, get rid of it, and not have a tax. The canopy size is obviously the only way we're surviving. But hopefully we can figure out ways to help get us to store. We're having difficulties getting our products into shelves when you have big corporate that could grow mass amounts and beat everybody out and put us out of business. Hopefully we could get grant money to help get some of these small farmers to the actual stores and pay the local person that does processing and distribution, that farmers like us that need that from the hills to bring it down and get processed and distributed. And the tax money cut goes towards that, helping towards that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next is iPhone 2.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Pender. I'm in District 1, and I'm with Ghost Dance. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak and for bringing this to the board today. We greatly appreciate it on behalf of all the cannabis farmers. I've been a legacy farmer in this county since 2016. I started and got my first permit. It hasn't been easy any of the ways, and I won't go on a long-winded breath about that, but the taxes, not having the taxes the last 2 years has extremely helped us to survive. There's been no money, like you've heard before, coming into our pockets. We put it back into our farms, into our businesses, into the bills we have to pay to keep this running for something we believe wholeheartedly, the medicine that is here to help get harder drugs out of our streets and away from our kids. I'd like to also bring to the attention, like, we have so many legacy farmers here who are winning awards. We grow superior product to other counties. Please, please consider this extension on bringing a long-term resolution to this that can help these legacy farmers, including myself, to stay here, to bring the recognition to this county for this product. Like, Napa's got the wine, but let's keep the cannabis. Let's keep it here in our county. Keep the legacies alive. Keep the corporate out, you know. I do like the gross sales tax. That could really be something we could look at, just, you know, maybe a happy medium for everybody, you know. But thank you again. Thank you for considering this. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next is Zaro.
Hi, my name is Zaro Savev, Cresta Properties. Thank you for the supervisors bringing that to the public. I just have a few things to say. That you guys were elected to have to bring prosperity to the county, and I'd like to say that without you, it's not going to be cannabis if we keep going that way, because it's really tough for the farmers, and I think a lot of people before me said everything. It's bad. It's really bad, but we are hoping that we're gonna pass that and go forward and make prosperity. So it's in your hands to save cannabis industry, or to get it out. And if it's no cannabis industry, it's not going to be any taxes, because it's really tough for the small farmers like us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next is guest.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. This is Margot Kambara, county resident, taxpayer, and registered voter. The decision before you is a business decision, and I suggest that the board gather more information from the tax collector so you can make an informed decision. Already, the county is subsidizing the cannabis industry. There was almost $2 million shortfall in cannabis tax revenue. And yes, the market for cannabis has declined precipitously. But at what point, again, we have to look at this as a business decision. At what point is the county going to continue to subsidize this industry? How much help did the pear industry get, and the walnut industry? And those are like legacy crops for Lake County, and they're iconic crops. And of course, there's the wine industry, and there's a wine decline in consumption. And I know wine industry people are very worried. So we are not a prosperous county. So we have to make hard decisions on where does our largesse stop. The other point I'd like to make is that, gosh, we're making such strides in being an aspirational county in good health, being a blue county. Oh gosh, I forgot the term.
Blue
But
zones.
anyway, thank you. Yes. So we want to have be promoting healthy lifestyles, and yes, medical cannabis has great attributes, but in general, we should be promoting healthy lifestyles. No smoking, and I'm sorry, but limited alcohol consumption as well. But this is a huge decision, and I believe the county would benefit from getting more data from the county tax assessor collector. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Let's try again, Carolyn Hillman, see if we can get audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. I'm Carolyn. I'm a compliance director at Pasta Farm in District 5. And I just want to thank you for hearing me today, and I'm grateful to be able to attend on Zoom. I'm speaking today to express my support for the resolution to extend the temporary reduction of cannabis cultivation tax rate and to continue limiting the tax to the Canopy area until a long-term solution is reviewed. Additionally, I support the proposal to rescind the suspension of tax rate increases according to the CPI, but I strongly oppose any overall increase that the cannabis tax rate at this time. I agree with Supervisor Pyska and Green that we do need a long-term solution and echo what Nora had mentioned previously in her comments earlier. As having worked for both wine grape and cannabis growers in Lake County, managing winery, vineyard, and compliance operations, I have firsthand experience with these challenges facing our agriculture industries in Lake County. While traditional crops like pears, walnuts, and grapes have long been economic staples, the cannabis industry has quickly become a vital part of our agricultural landscape. However, like many in the sector, we are struggling with the market declines, rising costs, and an increasingly difficult regulatory environment. Before the introduction of the cannabis industry, Lake County's tax revenue primarily relied on more traditional agricultural sectors, such as wine grape cultivation, pear and walnut farming, and livestock production. Tourism, especially related to wine and tasting and outdoor activities around Clear Lake, also contributed significantly, along with revenue and real estate, other businesses, to some extent, timber and fishing. These industries were the backbone of the local economy, supporting public services through property taxes, sales tax, and tourism income. The introduction of the cannabis industry provided a new and significant source of revenue, helping to bolster the local economy at a time when other sectors were facing challenges. This new revenue stream has been crucial in maintaining public services and supporting local infrastructure. When the original tax passed, the price was $1,000 per pound in 2019 and 20. It's currently at $200 per pound, and last year's high was $350. So at the current rate, it is still too high relative to the pound price, less than 30% of our original pricing when the tax was passed. Basically, at the reduced 50% rate, but at a 70% decline in pricing, means that the current rate is still more detrimental than the initial rates. So given this context, I strongly oppose any proposed increases in the cannabis tax. The current economic climate is challenging enough without the added burden of higher taxes, which could push many cannabis farmers to the brink of collapse, much like other struggling agricultural sectors. This would reduce our ability to reinvest in operations, innovate, and remain competitive, leading to potential job losses and further economic decline in our community.
And your time is
The
up.
cannabis
You can finish your
industry-
comment.
Being newer and still developing, I urge the board to consider the broader implications of tax increases and the cannabis industry, maintaining the current tax levels, crucial for supporting
Thank
Lake
you for your
County and
thank you for your comment.
very much.
Next is A.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Board of Supervisors. My name's Angela Emerald. Just seeing the industry struggle over the years and hearing some of the comments and concerns today, such as market oversaturation in a highly unstable industry, 80% of licensed cultivators are opting out, the county's losing money, and there's no clear impact analysis, perhaps it's time to have the hard discussion about a temporary moratorium on new permits, at least until the market levels out and isn't so saturated. By considering a moratorium, it could potentially create a niche market for the growers that are already here. While the voters did approve cannabis in the county, it was presented to the voters with all the possibilities that the tax revenue would bring in. I agree with Supervisor Green that if there is a reduction, it should be less than 50%. It was sold to the voters as a revenue generating industry. So I'd like to see if there was a moratorium maybe to protect the farms that are already here, and perhaps does this need to go back to the voters with updated information so that we know what we really voted for? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to the board chambers. I know there was at least one hand. Please come on up.
Thank you, Supervisor Sabatier. And yeah, it's a real struggle, and you already heard that, the 80% decline to run your farms. I guess the thing that I'm looking at is there's just the black market is huge. And how is that elephant in the room going to get addressed? Because if we don't do that, supply and demand rules the market. And yeah, I really like your proposals, and thank you for that. That'll help us survive a little longer. But if we don't start to, you know, we talked about prohibition in this room today. Well, they came up with ATF. We need ATF-C. If we don't have that, then the bootleggers run the day. So that's pretty much it. We need the tax break because we're producing things that cost us more to produce than we can sell for. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
Next, please.
Jennifer Smith, Canvas Farms. That's good. Feels good to say that. Sorry, Nora. I'm I'm sitting here and you guys know the stories. You know that the price is down. The price is down significantly since we passed this. And I'm sitting here and I'm hearing things that are being said that are always concerning to me, right? Like, we're calling this a tax. And let's be honest, like this is a fee. We can't call it a fee because the government can't make money on fees. And so I think by calling it a tax, it's this concept that the public thinks that we're not paying taxes and that we're asking for a tax relief, when really we're just asking to pay less of an exorbitant fee to do business. This is a business fee. Some would say it's extortion money. I don't know. I'm happy to be able to operate here. I'm happy to be able to still stand here and say that my farm is still operating. I invested in infrastructure when margins were good, and knowing that this is an agricultural commodity and that we are going to see these dips. And so as an agricultural product or commodity, however you want to look at it, I think we need to be more fairly treated like one and understand that there's no other industry that pays a right to play fee that is equal to these dollars. I just did the math, and I paid a 10% fee on my gross revenue if we go back to the regular tax structure. As it stands, over 40% of my expenses are in taxes, fees, and regulatory costs. That's a pretty big pill to swallow, and that's before I put a plant in the ground, pay anybody, buy any nutrients. And so it's really hard to also sit here and listen to people say that we owe the county these dollars and that we campaigned on these dollars. We did. Our expectations have changed as much as the county and the constituents' expectations have changed. But I think we're also forgetting that we are contributing to the county. There's jobs, and our employees' kids are going to these schools, and we're shopping at the local hydro stores and the grocery stores and Walmart, and we're driving on the roads and buying gas and paying taxes. And so there's a lot that goes into contributing to the economy of a community other than just this fee that we pay to operate a business. And so I don't think we're going to get the solution here today. I think there's a lot more information that needs to be gathered. And, Angela's right. We might need to go back to the polls on this, as much as none of us want to do that or bear the expense of doing that. I just know that what we have now doesn't work, and a long-term solution would be appreciated by, I think, the community, the board, and the farmers.
Thank you very much. Please be brief.
I just want to address this idea that this is being subsidized by the county and that we're being treated differently than other agricultural commodities and other agricultural products in the county. We absolutely are, and we would love to be treated like wine or like walnuts or like pears. We would love to pay the same taxes that wine growers pay, which is why so many people grow so many grapes here, because it's a lot cheaper to grow grapes here than it is to grow in Napa or Sonoma, where they're actually charging a fee for that. But this is not a subsidy. This is $2.3 million that the county has now that it did not have before cannabis was here. And it really upsets me when I hear people saying that that cannabis is being treated unfairly, and that's a positive. It is being treated unfairly, and it's a negative. We pay taxes. We pay every single tax that every other business pays, and additionally, we pay this tax or fee or extortion or whatever it is. But this is in addition to the other fees, and we would welcome and thank and fall on the ground in happiness if we were treated the same as the other agricultural crops here. So.
I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board for final decision and deliberation. I agree. Any business needs long-term predictability. Unfortunately, everything about this is unpredictable. And I know it's been mentioned, and I mention it as well. I know that the gross receipts is another problem in itself. It's not a simple switch, and it's an additional staff time that would be required in order to make that accomplished. So nothing simple about it. And waiting and not bringing this to the board when there's expirations at the end of the year and people need to know what's being planned for their business in the following years. I was internal departments reached out to me asking, is this something that I can do? Because they didn't feel it was their job to bring it to the board itself. It felt awkward. And I'm open for a conversation. I think that, unfortunately, agriculture is hard, no matter what it is that you're choosing to grow, because the market forces are beyond the majority of people's control. We say, it's really weird that Measure C says we look at $8 million for revenues when there was a contractor or consultant that was brought in that said you'll be lucky if you even make $700,000. So what was anticipated in the measure versus what was said we would get, we're kind of in the middle. And when we did reach $8 million, to be honest, it was a mess. We had early activation, and we had a lot of problems. And no, this is not being subsidized. We are in the positive of $2.3 or $2.5 million. Yes, it could be more, but at the same time, is it okay to ask for more and only lose what it is that we're collecting? I appreciate Mr. Sullivan telling us that we have 25 million square feet. If it was brought back to what it was, it'd be more than $25 million if it was all outdoor that we would be receiving. So the idea that even with what we have today, we're seeing less than 50%, less than 75% of what we should anticipate, increasing it, I don't know that that leads to greater outcomes for the revenues. I think that we have a lot of important programs that rely on these revenues. I want to make sure we continue these revenues. But I also do want to see us going back towards what it is that the voters requested. So hence why what you have in front of you. If there's a need to make a request to look for long-term solutions and come back, I'm okay with that. But at least it starts the conversation by having what we have in front of us today. Supervisor Green. And I'll go to Vice Chair Crandall afterwards.
Getting a little testy on some of the phrasing here, so let me just address.
to the suggestion we have a moratorium, we have a de facto moratorium already in place that unfortunately stands as an impediment to scaling this industry. If we had a better scaled industry, if we had more legacy farmers with more permits, we could probably have a different discussion today about sharing the burden differently. But because we have a de facto moratorium that if you don't have a water board permit as of a certain date, you don't even get to apply for a new farm, we are where we are. We have a smallish backlog of applications still remaining. We have a cannabis task force with some pretty impressive ideas for the next iteration of our commercial cannabis ordinance. But we are stymied by circumstances from scaling this industry using our very own permitting process until further notice. If the word subsidy is offensive, I'm going to use a different phrase, opportunity cost. This county does have an opportunity and an obligation and a responsibility to fulfill what the voters have enacted. And I don't think it's fair in any way if you want to revisit the wisdom of Measure C or Proposition 64, if it's extortion, if it's a fee versus a tax, it's voter approved. So by any other name, the voters of this county created a very clear expectation that we were going to establish a tax on commercial cannabis cultivation in the case of Measure C, and in the case of all other commercial cannabis activities downstream of that with Measure K in 2018. The market forces, I hear like this is going to be an extinction event. Clearly the local tax is something to be considered as part of the larger tax and compliance burden that our businesses face. But nobody's cracking open spreadsheets to tell me exactly where that is. The larger market forces at work are very much free market economy principles of supply and demand. If there is going to be oversupply, and we already know there is based on falling pot prices, guess what? That trend is going to continue, whether we give this tax break or not for the next year or two. That's the elephant in the room, is the larger macroeconomics of supply and demand. The other thing, I'm surprised nobody brought it up, is they are treated unfairly under federal tax law. So until we amend or repeal Internal Revenue Code 280E, our cannabis cultivators are not going to be able to take normal business deductions that other type of businesses and other types of agricultural operators enjoy. All they get to deduct is their cost of goods. So if we were to take it back to the voters, I'll tell you what, this thing passed with nearly 2/3 of the vote, it would probably eclipse 70%. They want us to tax and regulate cannabis activities. It was a simple light switch question. And just like Prop 64 passed by a wide margin, just like both of our cannabis tax measures locally passed by huge margins, we don't need to go back to the voters to figure out exactly what they wanted. They said, go out, get it done. We're not picky on the details other than what you've put here. I do believe we can easily get to $8 million or more a year if we do appropriately scale our industry by creating more permitting opportunities. I'm fascinated to hear kind of a pivot in the industry to support gross receipts taxation. I think that's very much worth exploring, and I think there is time left in this year that we could do that and talk about the type of ordinance you were talking about. That would be something we could do that could give permanent relief. The permanent shift in a Canopy application of this would be huge. So I appreciate that the clock was ticking and you had 3 different resolutions that you had to kind of bring back on the radar. But again, I can't support it in its current iteration because it has not enjoyed the benefits of a more robust fiscal analysis, because there are other options in there. It sounds like industry would be interested in exploring. I'm interested in exploring it, but it's not before us today. So it is what it is. We can do a one-off and just kick that can down the road and hope the next board and the next set of meetings bears fruit. But I think we have time before the end of the year to incorporate some of the comments and the wishes that were expressed here today and come up with more permanent, meaningful solutions than what is offered here today. Thank you for your comment. Vice Chair Crandall?
I think I heard someone mention AB 491. We are following it, and it was pulled by the author. So still following it, I think that would help immensely. It's not a silver bullet, but I know it's been something that we at RCRC have been supporting as well, because that takes care, not takes care, but it addresses some of the issues with illicit cannabis. And I think that's what puts a damper on things when we deal with legal cannabis. And so I also am favorable to 491 because I want to expound on it when it comes to meth. So just a side note. But again, following it very closely, I know it was mentioned. So that's all I'll say for now. I'll let you go, Moak.
I appreciate it. Thank you for bringing this, Chair. You know, when we first voted on some of these things, it was really to help establish the industry. We understand there's going to be market costs that drive the prices. They're going to change things. You know, I myself have seen this and gone through a few of these different iterations. You know, I think I compared this to legalization of gambling back in the early 90s. So, you know, these things are very interesting. You know, we have no way to see the future or have a crystal ball on it, but as presented today, I think this is the right move to adopt these things today, and a longer discussion to be had. I probably won't be here when that does happen. If it does come before the end of the year on some of the changes, I would agree to, you know, make some of those changes if they're done right, but today I'm ready to support this as presented by Chair Sabatier, and I think it still goes to the letter of the law. You know, the measure was passed for us to collect taxes. We are, and I still think we have some time to try and get the industry moving forward. So I think this is the right move, from my thoughts.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Supervisor Pyska?
I'm not super comfortable with moving forward because there's so much information that was brought up today. And we do not have an analysis here. This is just kind of winging up what we did a couple of years ago without considering changes and changing conditions at the state. I think we are always in the difficult place of trying to balance an emerging industry and what's best for our communities and contingencies and voters. So I'm on the fence right now of whether or not to just pass this or vote yes on this for today. But this is kicking the can. And that is not what is being asked of us, even from the industry here today. So I think we have time to do a better job at this. And I think involving our staff more in drafting of these documents is probably the better way to go, rather than just putting things in front of them and saying, is this okay with you? I disagree with that. You know that. I always disagree with that. So what is a rush for passing this today rather than taking some time to do it a little better and possibly incorporate some of the things that our tax collector is already working on?
So public comment is over at this moment in time. I take it the question was directed towards me. I wanted to make sure that we don't tell people at the last minute before there's an expiration of the resolutions,
Right.
what we were thinking, what was going to happen, because again, I'd love to do a 3-year, 5-year resolution so that there's better predictability in the future, but to at least give them a 3-month heads up of the predictability of what next year would look like. I am open to continued discussion. I would love to see Canopy be a done deal where we don't have to talk about cultivation area or canopy area and meet the state guidelines, things like that. I'm very open to. I did have many discussions with the tax collector, so it's not like I just put willy-nilly together. There was definitely some conversations, but I agree, there's a lack of analysis, but the analysis is a difficult analysis to even make in the first place, and I'm not an economist. And nor do we have one unless we hire one to take a look at that. And even then, I think it's totally a crystal ball situation for looking at what the future of the industry is. So I am open to discussions. If we need to dive deeper and extend this further, that's fine. I just wanted to get this at least before September 1st to get a 3-month heads up for any businesses and how they were planning to reinvest in their farms and be prepared for next year, because time goes by pretty fast, and situations to be prepared for next year's harvest, especially if you're not doing outdoor and you're doing indoor or anything else as well. Offering a suggestion. Because I love the idea of coming back and having a more robust discussion. Is it possible to move forward today with what is there? Because doing nothing, it would expire. And again, there is a caveat of a change here where now the CPI will be impacting the tax, because we suspended all 3. Right now, we're looking at suspending 2 out of the 3 rather than all of them. And also saying that within the next 3 months, 6 months, whatever the timeline is, to come back with a more robust, long-term plan on what to do for cannabis taxes. Because I don't think 3 months is enough to be able to really come back with a potentially full fiscal analysis and decision on what needs to be changed. I could be wrong, but I don't know that 3 months is enough, and I don't know that it's respectful to the industry to say on December 17th, here are the rules for January 1st.
Well, I don't think 3 months is enough either, and I don't want another rush job, and I don't want another piecemeal. We heard the word holistic today. We need to look at what's going on with the state. We need to see where we can advocate if that's necessary too. We do have lobbyists now. So I think I can be okay with this today, with the understanding though that I will not approve something like this again next year. Like, we have to do better. We have to do better for the industry, and we have to do better for ourselves.
And I think we're in agreement on that. Supervisor Green?
I'd like to incorporate those hopeful thoughts about what we can do and not do a rush job, but I don't have any potential in today's agenda item to even give direction to staff to start that process. So absent any real ability to bank on that future exploration, I'm still kind of stuck with this item as it's presented today. And I know you had to bundle it the way it is, but this does, again, continue to grant a very substantial discount without having really analyzed, forget the future analysis, how about an analysis of how much money this has been lost to potential county purposes, just the way it is right now. So it would have been great to start that longer discussion earlier this year, but we didn't get there. I also received outreach from staff saying, what about these? These are going to go bye-bye, and I wasn't willing to bring an item forward based on some of the concerns I've expressed here today. But if the conversation had gone a little bit different, hey, let's go gross receipts, we might have already had that item. So it's just buyer's remorse. But without a commitment to have those discussions, to bring follow-up items forward that could create the permanent changes here, it probably ain't going to change the outcome today, but I just can't support this as presented.
But we do have a commitment from the tax collector. You are working on things to bring forward.
Yeah, I think what I can add is I have a draft of the amendments that I was working on, pretty much complete. I can add in a few of the points that were raised today that I can include, and I can get that over to County Council to maybe help review and look at before we bring it back. But a lot of the ideas that have come up here are beyond the scope and capacity of us to do in an ordinance change. They would require going to the voters. The gross receipts tax, there have been discussions in the past. That, to implement in any real form, would require voter approval. So perhaps when I bring back the ordinance, and working with County Council, I can highlight what we are able to implement, those changes that can be brought forward now, and then go into some discussion about what these other potential changes are and what would be, what it would entail to do. Like gross receipts would require going back to the voters. The other counties that switched that I know where gross receipts didn't work out and they switched back, it's partially because of the staff time that's involved. It really requires a lot more investigative resources by my office. There's a lot more criminal actions that have to be brought, actions that are beyond our current capacity and would require a lot of resources. So I think what I could do is I could bring back the ordinance with what I have, and maybe give some idea of what those changes would look like if we wanted to pursue those paths, what resources would be needed by my office, what the cost would be, and what kind of timeframes would be involved. And I think we could probably give a big picture overview of what that would be.
With some financial analysis.
With some analysis, yes, I can include that as well.
And so I'm going to check in with County Council. Even if it's not within the agenda item or in the recommended action, we can always direct staff to take certain actions, such as what we're discussing, to follow up in assisting the tax collector with whatever we need for the financial analysis, or with the county counsel's office working alongside with our tax collector. We can always provide that direction, correct?
Yes, so direction to staff can always be provided, granted or relayed by motion or consensus, and it sounds like in this particular situation, the treasurer tax collector has already been doing some of the work that is related to this item. So, your board may provide direction by consensus or by motion even. The other option is to provide, since the treasurer tax collector is already doing the work, your board and any one of the members of the Board of Supervisors could also provide some suggestions, and which is kind of what's taking place right now, to the tax collector on ideas of how and what he can incorporate in the work that he's doing. So a more formalized version of that would be by direction by consensus or motion.
And I just see this, I know it goes into a specific pot into our budget fund, 1072, I think it is, but it's general fund in a some way, shape, or form. And I think that our admin office should be very interested in how we can maximize our general fund. So I'm seeking consensus not for our admin office to take the lead, but if there's a need for assistance, that they can assist in helping our tax collector bring something back. That's the consensus I'm seeking, and it looks like I'm
Yes.
getting enough nods to say yes. And so with that, looking to see if there's action to be taken today on the resolution that's before us. Supervisor Green?
Can you add to that consensus, Canopy?
I think that was part of that consensus, was to review all of the items that have been mentioned today.
And just a follow-up question to Patrick. You said it would likely take a voter approval to get into the gross receipts. As long as it doesn't increase the tax, is the mechanism of the tax crucial? I just don't know that county council has chimed in on that.
And I think that's part of the discussions that will occur, where county council will have to dig a little deeper for that. So that could be an option, yes. Sorry to cut you off.
That's fine.
Are you though? We're ready for action?
I'm ready for any action to be taken.
All right, I want to make sure, just one motion here, correct? We're not, all right. I move to adopt a resolution to, I offer the resolution as offered.
Resolution has been offered.
Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall?
Aye.
Supervisor Green?
No.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today for that conversation, and thank you for all the public input we received.